Welcome to FPS Entertainment, formerly known as Hobbies Reviews. I'm kind of going in a different direction with my channel than I had envisioned about 8 months ago when I started it. Less reviews. Reviews are still going to be a part of it, but it's going to be more just generally cool things, gameplay, things like that, firearms. So kind of maybe moving away from that mantra a little bit. So changing the name. Anyway, if you're new to the channel, watch it for the first time, you don't care. What we've got today is a little problem that I'm having with my VSR-10, my CYMA VSR-10. The thing's been a trooper. I've shot probably 4,000 rounds out of it. Pretty accurate, honestly. Pretty accurate, and it can lift up to 3.2 gram BBs. Anything above that, it won't really give it any hop. It'll push them out there, but as soon as the hop, it would need the hop in order to go a little bit farther, they just kind of drop. So besides that, it's been very accurate, very powerful, about 450 FPS. But that's not a review on, we're not doing a review on that. We're looking at the problem with feeding. This magazine has never really had problems until about 3 months ago, where every once in a while, especially with bio BBs, it would jam up. It would kind of send out just a few at a time. You'd fire, you'd rack the bolt, it would misfire one, not fire, and then it would fire the next one. And it progressively got worse until it got to the point where even regular BBs, non-bio BBs, weren't doing that. And I think the reason at first with bio BBs was because there's a little bit of residue with those things, and the tolerances are not quite as tight. Looking at what it's doing, there's a little button, where am I? There's a little button right here. When you push this, when it goes into the chamber, magazine chamber, it pushes on this tiny little lever right here, and when it does that, it releases the pressure of the spring. This is kind of a catch, if you will, and it's keeping everything, all the BBs, in here. When you push this, they should come just all flying out. I'm going to try to catch the BBs so they don't go everywhere. But I'm pushing it, and you can see how they're just kind of bleeding out. That's not how it's supposed to be. There's about 40 BBs in here, and they're not even coming out. I might have to push them out. Yep, they're completely jammed in there. So I'm going to pull this thing apart and see what's up. To solve this problem, we're going to go in here, and the first step is actually to take out the spring. And it's a little Phillips head screwdriver is all you're going to need. And you kind of want to keep your finger on this flat tab, because there's pressure from the spring that's going to push it up on you, and it might go flying if you don't have it held down. Once it screws out, you'll gingerly lift your finger off, and you'll be able to control it a little better. Set that little guy off to the side. And now you can pull out your spring. This is what that screw is holding on. This tab, that goes right into the spring. We'll set that to the side as well. We'll pull out the spring. One of the cool things about this magazine is it's 55 BBs. High capacity magazine. Winds all the way through here. We're going to take it all apart, and you'll see the channel the spring lives in. Again, Phillips head screwdriver for all 5 of these. There's 5 you have to take out. Once you've got all 5 screws out, you can just pull it apart. It should just come right apart. And here you've got the pressure, the tab that you can push in to release the BBs. And it just pulls right out. And now you can see the internals of the magazine. If we look at this one, actually, you can probably get a better idea of what's going on. The spring goes in through there, and it goes all the way through here. So these are all the room for the BBs. Probably till about there because the spring's going to compress. And what we're having issues with is this little follower or pusher getting caught, just getting jammed up here. And I can tell just by pushing on it that it is pretty dry. There's lubrication on the inside here, which means there was lubrication at some point inside this. And what we're going to do today is just make sure that it's well lubricated and that there's no sharp edges. If there are, we're going to inspect this and then file it down a little bit. Feeling all the corners of it. Does feel a little sharp. And that's probably just from rubbing on the sides. So we're going to just take a little bit of fine grit sandpaper and sand down the edges a little bit to make sure they're rounded and smooth. And I think this is 600 grit. Should do the job quite nicely. Just making sure everything's round and smooth. Don't want any sharp little edges. Already feels a lot smoother. Try blowing it off, getting all that dust off of there so that doesn't grit up the inside. And we're going to set that aside and just take some oil. I've got some 1.5 weight silicone oil, pretty light stuff. Shouldn't bind it up. And the goal is not to over lube this because otherwise you're going to get it all over the BBs, and that's just going to make a hot mess in your hop-up chamber. Basically, you're going to lose the friction that the hop-up chamber and the hop-up rubber operates under. Possibly a better way of doing this might actually be with a Q-tip now that I think about it, but I'm going to use what I got. Just getting that oil in there a little bit, running it all the way around. Making sure everything's nice and lubed up. Happy little lube, as a smart man would once say. We'll do it on the other side too. You can see on here, I keep losing track of where the camera is. There's a little bit of grit in there, so it got a little dirty. It's not surprising that it would kind of start to bind up after a little bit of time. Even though I haven't played with this thing outside, it just shot it in my basement as target practice when it's cold outside, when I can't go out shooting for real. But nonetheless, after a lot of BBs, it'll get dirty. It just happens. Once it feels like it's decently lubed up in there, we'll put it back together and see how it works. Just try to put a dab right there. Across. There we go. Now to put it all back together. We're going to set this down. We're going to take, first and foremost, we're going to take this piece, the top piece, and we're going to make sure we put it in right. You're going to take the end that doesn't have the hole, and you're going to take the springs and make sure they're pointed in there, just like that. Then you're going to take the other side, and you're going to put it right over the top. Now we have it together. But wait, the spring's not in there. No worries, we're actually going to put it in right through where we got it out before. We're going to connect the pusher or follower, I guess you might call it, in there first. Then we're going to start to feed it right through. Once you get to about here, you're going to take that end piece, stick that in the end of the spring, and feed it in. Now we're going to grab that big screw, big thick one I should say. Start out, get it in there. And see if it pushes the BBs through any better. Nice and solid, and then we'll put the other ones in. Everything's nice and snug. Let's get some more BBs in there. See if our little job worked here. Oh yeah, way better. So there you go. The solution to the CYMA VSR-10 with the magazine not loading or not feeding correctly. It just requires a little bit of lube and making sure that the edges are not scuffed up or rough or catching on anything, because there are some spots there where that follower could actually catch. So just smooth it off and you're good to go.